just broken. But I'm going to enjoy it to the max of what I can. Even though I'm going to be in pain, I'm not trying to get out of pain. I'm trying to live life.
Hope for the Caregiver with Peter Rosenberger. Saturday mornings at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on American Family Radio.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Walker Wildman.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. This is our Monday edition of the program. Glad to have you with us live here on the show. Pray that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family and your friends and your loved ones. And Christmas will be here before we know it. Hey, what happened, what really was here before we knew it was Culture Warrior. We've been kind of teasing Culture Warrior film for probably the last 10 or 12 months in some degree. We used to have Michael Perkins on about it as they were still producing it, just to kind of give us an update. But it's available now. The full film is available now at culturewarrior.movie, culturewarrior.movie. We got about a 2.5 minute trailer here that we want you to listen into. Let's listen.
During the Christmas season of 1976, I sat down one night to watch television.
As we started looking for something to watch, every channel had something inappropriate on it. There was nothing good.
I became angry that night. I left the parish ministry and founded the National Federation for Decency.
And I remember people going, "You're going to do what now, exactly?"
Reverend Wildman.
Reverend Wildman.
The Reverend Donald Wildman.
Reverend Wildman says the show is too sexually suggestive.
We monitored television to see who was sponsoring the offensive shows.
It was totally covered from the networks to the advertisers.
Well, at first they wanted to ignore it, but then after a while they couldn't.
NBC said the boycott is an obvious attempt at intimidation, and we will let the people judge the fairness of this tactic.
I'd like to know what right you think you have to tell me what to watch on TV.
Send that question to the network, okay?
He used to say, "Well, let everybody think I'm dumb." Said that's to my advantage.
You know who sells more pornography than anybody else in America? 7-Eleven, your friendly family convenience store.
He stepped on a whole lot of toes early on, and they thought, I think, that they could just crush him.
Don told me that, Ben, I've been sued by Penthouse and by Playboy. Things were changing, and many people just sort of acclimated to it, and Don Wildman didn't.
The Last Temptation of Christ.
It was going to be a blasphemous movie about the life of Jesus.
We're not talking about the specifics, we're talking about the general theme.
What you did with Brother Don as the leader, you got on and hung on as best you could.
AVA is funded in part by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts.
So it was just vile stuff that was being funded by the government.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
He was going to be faithful and leave the success up to God.
He's had an uncanny ability to look down the road and see the impact of things that are happening today.
I'm not trying to be a prophet of doom. I'm trying to be honest with you.
When you see people live out their faith, you know there's something to it.
One person can make a difference.
Well, there you have it. That's the Culture Warrior. That's the full trailer there. And you can still watch that trailer over at culturewarrior.movie. But also the full film is available right there at culturewarrior.movie. So we would encourage you to go there, watch it, share it with family and friends, and become a culture warrior. That's the message. It's not just a film about my grandfather's life, which that in and of itself is pretty fascinating, but there's more to it than just that. There's really a call to activism, a call to you becoming a culture warrior. And there's countless stories, even some of these documented in the film, about ordinary people that really took on my grandfather's call and did some extraordinary things. For example, there's one testimony of a lady in Texas. I think she was out of Dallas, but it was during one of the boycotts. I believe it was during I think it was the 7-Eleven boycott. Nonetheless, she went to several churches and got, a couple hundred or 1,000 signatures to the local manager and the local owners of the convenience store. And anyway, she ended up making a lot of headway, a lot of progress, and making a lot of progress rather, and got pornography pulled out of all the stores in her local area. So it just shows if one person is faithful to God's call in their life, God uses that in tremendous ways and honors that in tremendous ways as well. The other story I wanted to get to this segment is the story of Daniel Penny. This is tragic, and we still don't know what the final verdict is. We should know probably today or tomorrow, or at least sometime this week as the jury deliberates. But many of you saw the story of Daniel Penny defending innocent civilians on the subway in New York City. This story goes back over a year ago, and it went viral. Many people saw the video, but there was a gentleman whose name escapes me. I don't have it in front of me right now, but he was on the subway threatening passengers, and he had a criminal background, was hyped up on drugs while he was engaging with the passengers. And remember, the context here is the New York City subway, which is known for murders and violence and people being assaulted. But Daniel Penny intervened to protect, in my opinion, to protect civilians. And he put this aggressor in a chokehold, a light one at that, based on the evidence, and was being really a good Samaritan at the end of the day. But the New York City prosecutors have just gone after him, destroyed his life, and are trying to lock him up for who knows how long. But the jury's going into deliberations probably this evening, maybe tomorrow. Closing arguments are taking place now. But this is, folks, this is what happens in cities and states where the law and the law enforcers and the prosecutors go easy on the real criminals, and they go hard on the good Samaritans. I mean, everything is upside down in this situation. For example, New York City has been notorious in New York State for releasing violent criminals back onto the streets. But here we have Daniel Penny, the Good Samaritan, and him trying to lock him up for 5 or 10 years, maybe longer. Fox did a report this morning on the jury deliberations and some of the closing arguments that are taking place in this trial. This is going to be clip 2, but let's kind of get an up-to-date report from Fox News on Daniel Penny's fate. And this is clip 2.
Bill, good morning. Well, before jurors begin deliberating the fate of Daniel Penny, both the prosecution and defense will have a final chance to make their case on whether Penny should be found guilty of recklessly killing Jordan Neely. Over the course of the trial, prosecutors called a total of 35 witnesses, including one of their key witnesses, medical examiner Dr. Cynthia Harris, who testified that Penny's chokehold did indeed kill Neely. Harris told jurors there was, quote, sufficient and consistent enough pressure during the restraint to kill Neely, adding that there was unanimous consensus on her team after reviewing this video of the ordeal. Now, on the other hand, Penny's defense team has argued to jurors their client had no time to de-escalate the situation and acted to protect others. They offered up other ways Neely could have died using a hired expert witness. And you can see Penny right there on your screen now arriving. So that hired expert witness, Dr. Satish Chandru, testified that, quote, combined factors led to Neely's death. Chandru said Neely's blood condition, synthetic marijuana use, schizophrenia, along with the exertion during the struggle with Penny, killed Neely. Jurors have also heard several eyewitnesses describe how they felt about Penny stepping in.
So that's the latest report, and you heard both sides there as far as what the prosecutors are presenting versus what the defense is presenting. And this is a tragedy. I mean, just the fact that it's gotten to this point is a tragedy. And let me just explain why why I think it's a tragedy. First off, I think this is very similar in many ways to the George Floyd situation. Not exactly, because the officer there was an officer, so it was an agent of the law as opposed to a private citizen. Daniel Penny was a bystander, a good Samaritan. The officer whose name escapes me in the George Floyd tragedy, that was a law enforcement officer on duty discharging his duties. With the George Floyd situation, I always thought from the beginning that at best for the prosecutors, that was an excessive force charge. If you go back and watch the video and you look at the evidence, I still don't believe to this day, and I don't think the evidence shows that the officer there in the George Floyd incident killed George Floyd. That's just my opinion. I don't think the officer's actions led to the death of George Floyd. I think that there's a strong case that the officer's actions qualified as excessive force, in my opinion, simply because of the fact, the length of time that the officer had his knee on the neck of George Floyd. I just think it was too much. It was too long. But that charge and the charge that he's serving time for are two completely different charges. I don't know what an excessive force sentence carries, but I guarantee you it doesn't carry what the officer is doing now in prison. And so, but this is the problem when we have a heavily politicized media, a heavily politicized culture where the cops are the bad guys virtually all the time. And the Daniel Penny, the Good Samaritan in this case, is also the bad guy virtually all the time. And the actual criminals, like George Floyd, they're somehow the victim. It's bizarre. It's upside down. But my point is, our culture is so polarized, so politicized, so ideological that, and the social justice movement is so rampant that we have a hard time just balancing out and being rational with our assessment of these situations. For example, with the George Floyd situation, there was two crowds, and I wasn't in any of them. There were two crowds, and there still is today. Candace Owen talks about this. Many others still talk about the George Floyd incident, but coming out of that, there were two crowds. There were the crowds that thought the officer did absolutely nothing wrong. And then there was the crowd that thought that George Floyd did nothing wrong and the officer did everything wrong. And I kind of fall somewhere in the middle, because clearly George Floyd had some problems, because he wouldn't have been in that situation had he simply obeyed lawful orders given by the officers. And he was hyped up on drugs. That's a fact. But I thought the officer was applying pressure for far too long. When you look at the evidence, that officer had like 4 to 5 other officers with him. So this wasn't a one-on-one fear for my life, I'm going to be overpowered by a larger male situation. Thus, you apply the force for an extended amount of time. In this case, they had handcuffs on. George Floyd was cuffed, and there were a litany of other officers that were on scene there to back up the officers. So I thought the use of force was a little bit excessive, probably would meet the threshold for being excessive force according to the law, but I don't think that the officer should do the time that he's doing, and I don't think he should have been charged for the charges that he was convicted of in that case. But that's the unfortunate reality of where we are. But back to the Daniel Penny case. Daniel Penny's a Good Samaritan here. And when you watch the body cam video of the officers that showed up right after this happened, multiple eyewitnesses stated, and I wanted to bring this in, but it wouldn't make good radio because it was a video with closed captioning, and you could actually had a hard time hearing what they were saying, but you could read their lips and read the captioning. But basically, at least 2 of these eyewitnesses said that, look, hey, Daniel Penny's a good guy here. He showed up and saved us. Another witness said that Daniel Penny, that his chokehold was a very light chokehold. I mean, it was not, under no circumstances was it a life-threatening chokehold. That's according to another one. And so, but pretty much the assessment that I'm laying out today is that I would not want to live and operate in one of these cities. I just wouldn't want to do it. And I don't even like traveling to them, because who knows what situation you're going to get put in. And our law is being used in all the wrong ways to punish all the wrong people. And all the people that should be gone after by the full force of the law, well, they're getting let out the door. And if we really want to bring this back, let's do it. Let's bring it back to Hunter Biden. So in America 2024, the New York prosecutors want, the New York City prosecutors, this is Alvin Bragg's office, by the way, same people who went after Trump. The New York City prosecutors, they want Donald Trump in jail, and they want Daniel Penny in jail. And the same party that they're a part of wants Hunter Biden pardoned. Now, you want to talk about an upside-down judicial system? That's it.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
90.5 KTXG, Greenville, Dallas.
Man, we have such a cultural war against God's ways. I really wish I could make a more positive impact.
If that's you, you can. AFA President Don Wildman invites you to join AFA Action Alerts. Sign up to receive 2 weekly emails with calls to action on foundational family, national, and Christian matters. Prayerfully sign up on the alerts page at afaaction.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Robert Thornton. President Joe Biden pardons his son Hunter despite claiming that no one is above the law. Here's Fox's Rich Edson.
A jury convicted Hunter on federal gun charges, and he pleaded guilty to federal tax charges. Yet for years, the White House insisted the president would not do what he just did. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer spent years investigating the Biden family. He writes, quote, Joe Biden has lied from the start to finish about his family's corrupt influence peddling activities. President Biden and his family continue to do everything they can to avoid accountability. Democrats say Trump's picks in top justice roles show he is planning on targeting Hunter. The White House says even as Hunter's trials have finished, it doesn't seem that Biden's political opponents would let go of investigating him.
In a statement yesterday, the president claimed his son's prosecution was politically motivated, that any reasonable person would think the same. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre gave her remarks about the pardon aboard Air Force One.
The president believed enough is enough, and the president took action. And he also believes that they tried to break his son in order to break him.
Democrat Colorado Governor Jared Polis wrote on X that this is U.S. officials say a ceasefire is holding in Lebanon despite Israel and Hezbollah trading strikes. Fox's Jared Halpern reports.
Hezbollah fired rockets into the Israel-Lebanon border zone, the first strike since a ceasefire last week. The terror group says it was a defensive and warning response for repeated violations of the ceasefire by Israel.
This was expected. This is why. I mean, you're talking about a war that's been raging now for actually many years, if you think about it, certainly since October 7th.
White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby says Israel maintains the right to defend itself. The U.S. and France are monitoring compliance with the ceasefire that calls for a 60-day withdrawal of forces. In Washington, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Closing arguments begin in the trial of a veteran charged in the chokehold death of a New York City subway rider. Marine Corps veteran Daniel Penny claims he acted in self-defense against threatening behavior when he put Jordan Neely in a chokehold on May 1st, 2023. Penny has pleaded not guilty to manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. RFK Jr.'s nomination as the next Health and Human Services Secretary could lead to a crackdown on food additives as part of a plan to make Americans healthier. Here's Fox Business's Jerry Willis.
RFK Jr. has been pointing to a federal loophole that allows food companies to determine which substances are generally regarded as safe. The U.S. allows some 10,000 additives compared to just 300 by the EU.
Well, most of the health impacts are coming from food.
Now, Kennedy believes that the American diet is rife with poisonous additives and chemicals that are making people sick and fat, and that we do well to follow Europe's example. Take the Big Mac. The U.S. Big Mac has nearly 100 more calories than the U.K. Big Mac, 42% more fat, more carbs, but about half the sodium.
Kennedy's nomination is likely to face pushback over his anti-vaccine stance, among other past controversies. Fox Weather reports the impacts from the historic lake effect snowstorm have been far-reaching, not only because of the sheer amount of snow that fell, but also because of the